because I couldn't wait. Yesterday, I saw something interesting. I wish I lived in Philly because maybe I could get the Merrill Reese limousine. And having me being limo to an interview with Merrill Reese. I mean, I catch Gary Cobb in the back seat there. He's drinking wine. I think a Merlot had to be from Napa. I don't know what Merrill's doing. I mean, I was like, what's this? Merrill picked you up in a limo? I don't know. You're taking him to a limo, taking him to an interview. I'm like, man, I need to move to Philly here because I want that star-studded treatment here. With all further ado, the golden voice of the Philadelphia Eagles, Merrill Reese. Merrill, I appreciate you doing this.
My pleasure, Dan. Good to be with you. Anytime you're in Philly and you want to do my Tuesday night show from 6 to 7, we will get, at the very, very least, a chauffeured bicycle to bring you here.
I got Gary sitting in the back seat, and I go like this. Whoa, look at Merrill, man. He's rolling out the link. He goes, no, don't start that rumor. I'm going to do Merrill Reese's show here. So anyway, Merrill, 5 games in, the Eagles are what to you?
The Eagles are a good football team trying to find themselves, getting over the early part of the season where they're not quite ready, where you don't go through the hitting and play the regulars during the preseason. I think they're progressing. They're not there yet, but I think they're one of the better teams in the NFC. A lot is yet to be determined, but I'm not discouraged. And as a matter of fact, it's funny because a lot of people were upset about the way they played against the Browns last week, only winning, a tight game. And to be honest with you, I was talking to my friend Seth Joyner, and you know Seth, and Mike Quick calls Seth, and they're good friends. He always calls him Debbie Downer because Seth looks at the game tape like a radiologist looks at an MRI and always has a million things to say, and many of them are negative. And Seth has a TV show, and I was on with Seth the other night, and Seth said, you know what? I'm very encouraged. I saw a lot of good things last week. I know they were the Browns, but still the defense gave up 3 touchdowns, three field goals. That's it. The touchdown came on a blocked field goal. Jalen had a very good game. Quarterback rating of 126. He was at 16 for 25 throwing the football. Completion rate of almost 70%. No fumbles, no interceptions. You know the Eagles have great wide receivers, as good a pair as there are in the National Football League. I mean, when you look at A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, I don't think there's a better pair. There are some other very, very good pairs and some great receivers, but these two are as good as it comes. The offensive line is very, very good. And then Seth pointed out that there are some young players, particularly the first and second round draft choices in this draft, who look like they're going to be around for a long time, and they are going to be exceptional. And I'm talking about Quinones. He is a terrific young player, and I'm talking about Carter DeJean. So I think there's some very good things here.
How about this here, Merrill? I'm going to make a point to you here. Let me take and do something that I traditionally don't do because I kind of look at things like Seth does. But let me go on the other side here, and I'll pull a Seth on you here now with something positive. Could it be that this offense and this team is in the same place that the Chiefs were in a year ago when they were losing games to the Raiders, and they were losing games like that at Arrowhead because they were finding themselves with their young players on defense and finding themselves with their young players in the passing game, that it took a little time. And by the end of the season, that football team was playing like they were a 14-win team.
Yeah.
Now, they only won 11 games, but they would go on to win the Super Bowl because they had a lot of bumps and bruises at the beginning of the season there. So, I mean, do you think that's kind of where they are right now? New coordinator, new scheme, new terminology in that?
I do. I honestly do. I'm not going to tell you they're going to win the Super Bowl.
Got it.
that prediction right now after 5 games. But I can tell you that when you look at a guy like Quinyon Mitchell has almost had an interception in every game. We would have had one last week, except that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson came in for the ball too, and they bumped together. But he doesn't play like a rookie. And we've only seen a little bit of Cooper DeJean. But Dan, this is a talented athlete who can do a lot of things for your football team. And you mentioned Grant Calcaterra. He came in, played well. So this is a pretty good team.
Tell me something about the Philly fans here. Do you think they like to cheer more or boo more?
I think they like to cheer more. I really do. But they're discerning. They're not going to cheer if a squirrel runs across the field and picks up a football or one of those things that happen every now and then. And they're not going to cheer for anything ordinary. But this team, this town loves this football team. And when the booing goes on, as it did at the end of the first half, right after the field goal was blocked and taken 50 yards by our old friend Rodney McLeod for a touchdown, there was some booing as they went to the locker room. So they're just passionate, but they don't mean it. These fans love this team. If I were a player, there's no place I would rather play than here, because these people are beloved by the fandom.
Let me ask you this then, to expand on that. Then how does a guy that's 37-19, been to the playoffs every year, has an NFC championship ring, how does a guy like that get booed in his own yard? And you got people in the media, some calling for his job, some think he's coaching for his job. How can a guy be a winner like you're saying, and that Philly likes to root for a winner? But you look at Nick Sirianni, he seems like a complex story in Philly right now. How do you see this whole thing? Because he's under, now again, being the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, I get it. It's like being the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. So I understand the pressure that job comes with, especially in a city like Philly. But I thought they rooted for winners. It seems like half the fan base, Merrill's not rooting for him.
It's not half the fan base, I can assure you that. It may be the noisiest part of the fan base, the guys who like to call the talk shows. But I think a lot of people realize that he does have a winning record, that he's been to the playoffs every single one of his 3 years, and he's been to the Super Bowl in his second year. And somebody asked me the other day, how many coaches do you think this year are on the hot seat? And I said, just off the top of my head, probably 27 or 28. That's really, and it goes week to week. I mean, that is one of the most controversial positions in all of sports, to be a head coach in the NFL. You lose a couple of games, they're ready to run you out of town. You win a big game, they're saying you should be the coach of the year. But I really think, I know this. Nick is very popular with his players. I know this. I know he's won a lot of games. I know that he's made some decisions that are not great. I mean, that doesn't mean, because I think he's a good coach, that I agree with them marching down and going for it on 4th down and 4 at the 10-yard line. I'd much rather take the points at that. I mean, there are decisions that I'll say, why did he do this or why did he do that? But I felt the same way. I felt the same way about every coach that's ever been here. If you ask people, of all the coaches in the National Football League right now, who is the greatest coach, who is a lock to go into the NFL, the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Andy Reid. Andy Reid's right up there with the best ever. And yet, I remember, you remember Governor Rendell of Pennsylvania? Governor Rendell married he performed the ceremony when my daughter got married 8 years ago. And there was and it was an outdoor wedding with a nice big crowd. And all of a sudden some clouds came up behind him and a couple of little rumbles of thunder. And he turned to the people who were at the wedding and said, listen, if any of you see any lightning, let me know, because my my time management isn't much better than Andy Reid's. That was the line Governor Rendell used. But Andy used to get criticized for
Oh, totally.
all the time. It's Dick Vermeil got booed. Yeah, they all got booed, and it's just part of it. And every coach, but when you look at what he's achieved, he's done a very, very good job, and he is emotional. But you know what? I will bet you. And first of all, there was no cursing out the crowd last week. I think he had a couple of words about what they were asking for, and said something like, "See, we won." And I will bet you, because of all the to do, from now on, you will see Nick at the end of a game run into the tunnel and get out of there. He's stuff. He said he wants to improve as a person, and he wants to make sure that his energy is used in the right directions. So I think he'll back off. But you know what? When it comes down to it, Dan, it fits into the category of much ado about nothing.
Let me bring something up to you and get your opinion on it. Again, you know why we love getting you on. You're so good at it. You're so honest with us, and you've been around the team and you know the inner workings of it. I said this earlier in my program, and you tell me if you think it's wrong. One of the things that I have a problem with the organization is that, you need to learn how to develop assistant coaches too. I look at Kellen Moore and I look at Vic Fangio and I go, well, I don't see the offense being any different right now than what Brian Johnson did. Brian Johnson's offense was eighth. I mean, if you're trying to develop a quarterback, Merrill, aren't you also trying to develop a continuity between coordinators also and assistant coaches? There just doesn't seem to be a long lifeline for many of these coordinators, especially these coordinators that have been recently in Philly. I mean, Sean Desai was 10-2. He had beaten Mahomes. He had beaten Tua. He had beaten Stafford. He beat, some really good quarterbacks, and they were pretty decent. Yes, they got killed by two teams. That happens. I mean, to move off those coordinators like that last year, I thought it would have been better to, have the defense mature with those guys and also with Brian. Do you have a problem? Because I think that affects Jalen's ability to grow as a quarterback. If you don't have the same coordinator in your ear, look at Andy Reid, got 8 years now or 7 years now with Mahomes. Hell, Tom Moore was with Peyton Manning for 13 years in Indianapolis. Do you worry about that a little bit, that there's so many new coordinators that it does stunt and slow the growth of a quarterback when he's trying to be a quarterback in this league?
Well, a couple of things about that. I think they were wrong last year in making the move with Sean Desai, who was a hardworking young coordinator, and then they removed him, and Matt Patricia came in, and it didn't get better. So that didn't turn out to be a good move. And I think if you were to ask them, I think they would probably admit to the fact that simply didn't work out. But you know what happens today, Dan? Not just in Philadelphia, but every place. You get a really sharp coordinator. And I think these guys, I think Kellen Moore is a sharp coordinator. Let's not judge him on 5 games. Let's wait. Let's wait another 5 or 6 games to see how the offense evolves. But when you get a really good coordinator who's had great success, like Shane Steichen, what happens? Immediately after that season today, he becomes a head coach in Indianapolis. What happens when somebody like Jonathan Gannon develops a reputation of being a really brilliant defensive mind? Like that, he's hired by Arizona. Today, these young coordinators all want to be head coach. Well, not all. Not all. I've met a couple who are very happy being where they are, but a lot of them, their dream is to be a head coach, and they're gobbled up. So it's not just holding on to them, but it would benefit Jalen Hurts if he didn't have to change offensive coordinators every year. I mean, he's been doing this for years, since college. He's had an offensive coordinator maybe 1 year, or with Steichen 2 seasons. That was the year they went to the Super Bowl. But these are really bright coordinators. And Vic Fangio has been around forever. So I think he's had his taste of being a head coach in Denver, and he's not ready to move anyplace. And the other coach, who I will tell you, if he said tomorrow that, you know what, I've been an assistant long enough, I want to be a head coach, he would be the number one candidate for every team needing a head coach next year, and that is Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, because he is the best at his business in this business. He's the best offensive line coach I've ever seen. And I'll give you another name. And he was a friend of mine, and he was a great defensive coordinator. Had an interview with the 49ers for their job, but really wasn't interested in taking that. Would have been a great head coach, but really didn't want to, and that was Jim Johnson. He was a great defensive coordinator, and he stayed there and had some great defenses. So it's a combination of things.
I'll say this to you. You're right. Trying to find a guy like Steve Spagnuolo who just wants to, I mean, he was offered. He makes head coaching money right now, being the coordinator in Kansas City, and he's going to go to the Hall of Fame as an assistant coach with his 4 Super Bowls. He was a coach with the Rams, but now he's comfortable in Kansas City. He's not aspiring to be a head coach now. It's hard to find guys like that.
But he had his fill.
He did.
He did have a chance. He was a head coach temporarily. However, you said something, and I'm not sure I agree with you. And that is, you said he's going to go to the Hall of Fame with his 4 Super Bowls. When's the last time a coordinator who was not doing it as a head coach? I think there should be.
No, that category now for contributors is now open to like having these coordinators now being considered to go into the Hall of Fame.
They should have gone anyhow.
I know.
You tell me Bud Carson,
absolutely
Hall of Fame. He's one of the greatest. Jim Johnson is
Woody Woodfire, from the guy from the Steelers who created the Steel Curtain. Guys like that, like you said, Jim Johnson,
Buddy
Ryan
in the Hall of Fame for what he did as a defensive coordinator. The only one I can think of who's in the Hall of Fame who was a coordinator and was not as successful in his short stay as a head coach, but he was also an exceptional player. So you combine the fact that he was an all-pro player is Dick LeBeau.
Yeah.
Dick LeBeau's in the Hall of Fame. But I don't think it's just because he was the coordinator.
But that's a great call. But he's not in the Hall of Fame because
of
his play. No, he's not in the Hall of Fame because of his play, but he's in the Hall of Fame because of his play and coordinator. Yes. Because he played with my uncle with the Giants. So yeah, I mean that's a great call. I had forgotten about Dick LeBeau being in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But like you said, because people were always trying to get Don Coryell in, but Coryell just didn't have the numbers to get in. So what they did was they made a contributor to the game. Even though he was a head coach with the Chargers, they wanted to give it. So like he was an innovator, West Coast offense, spread offenses. He was one of the first of its kind. So now I think you're going to see more of those guys. And to your point on Jeff Stoutland, I'll say this to you, Merrill. I played against the Eagles in the era where you had not the greatest O-line back during the Buddy Ryan days. Those guys were good players. They weren't great players. You guys even tried to make a trade for my friend Jim Lachey, which fell through, and they ended up going to the Redskins at the time, now the Commanders.
I'll tell you about that. Lynn Stiles was the Eagles' offensive personnel director at that time.
I thought Keith Byers set that thing up too.
No. What happened was Lynn Stiles was the offensive coordinator. Marion Campbell was still the head coach, and they came into the war room, and when their time came up, and they said to Lynn Stiles, "All right," he said, "Get me the best left tackle in the business." And Lynn Stiles says, "Well, I have one. The guy you want is Jim Lachey." And Marion said, "Well, he's a guard. He's not a left tackle, or he's a right tackle. I want a left tackle." And Lynn Stiles says, "Well, there's some pretty good wide receivers out there. There's this kid by the name of Jerry Rice, and another one named Al Toon, and another one named Eddie Brown, said, "Give me the best left tackle on the board." So Lynn Stiles said, "Well, you have to go down that board pretty far, but the best left tackle on the board is a kid by the name of Kevin Allen from Indiana." And they picked him with the first pick, their first round pick. And he's, you look in the dictionary under the word bust, and there's a picture of Kevin Allen. So, I mean,
Hey,
but
Merrill, he was hey, Merrill, Kevin Allen was a friend of mine, and he played with me in the World League. And he said that he screwed up so mightily. He constantly had confrontations. He got into a little trouble
Yeah,
with the offensive lines coach's daughter. I won't go into that, but he told me the whole story. It was really ugly. And, he said that he was self-inflicted on his career, and he really did not pan out or play out in Philly because of a lot of things that he did.
sure.
And you and I know the story. We won't go into it, but he, that was behind the scenes. So, I mean, but you're right. Jim Lachey was the guy, and Jim Lachey had a great career. And then he went on to Washington, and he was a super left tackle.
Great tackle. Great player.
Yep.
Great. But but you never know how these things go.
No, but to your point on Stoutland, I'll tell you this. I have never seen, you guys had Howard Mudd, and then you somehow rolled in to Jeff Stoutland. Now, I'll tell you, Jeff Stoutland was at the University of Miami back in the time before he went to Alabama, and he was actually an interim head coach after a coach got fired at UM. And I was like this. I go, and I talked to people down there. Mary Cristobal was an offensive line coach also at Alabama, and he said that Stoutland is absolutely, him and Bill Callahan are probably the two best O-line coaches in the sport today. I don't know what he does, but man, I heard something that he does that I love. Whether you're the first team guy or the third team guy, you'll get the same amount of reps in practice.
Yes.
That the first team guy, Merrill, nobody does that.
Well,
the first team guys get all the reps, and after that, you barely build that guy up, and you barely develop that guy. He's developing the guy that's starting and the 2s and the 3 guy at the same time. It's insane.
Everyone in the O-line room. That's why when a Jordan Mailata goes down, you can send in somebody that nobody heard of by the name of Fred Johnson, and he's not going to turn into Jordan Mailata, but he's not going to be a sieve. He's going to be able to stand up and keep the people out of Jalen Hurts' face.
Absolutely. 2 last questions for you. A.J. Brown's impact, in your opinion, is he, outside of a quarterback, in your opinion, in the last 20 years, is he the most impactful player that the Eagles have had in a huddle?
Ooh, outside of a quarterback. I mean, he's right there. I mean, he's awfully good by impact.
We're talking Westbrook. We're talking your tight ends that you've had.
They're right there.
T.O.
There's one who's going in the Eagles Hall of Fame.
Shady
McCoy. I mean, he was great running back. Great running back, owns all the records. So he was, and there was another guy, you said in the last 20 years. There was somebody by the name of something or other Dawkins.
Hey, I'm talking offensive here. Brian Dawkins is in a different group over here. He's on one of the Mount Rushmore. He's on my Mount Rushmore, of Eagles over the last 25 years.
I'll give you an offensive player.
Okay.
Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce was the lifeblood of that team. Jason Kelce could change line calls. Jason Kelce could block on several levels.
How much is he missed? How much is he missed right now, in your opinion?
I think Jason Kelce has got to be missed because of the kind of person he has had, but he's not missed as much as a center because a guy who he helped scout, who he looked at on tape and said draft him by the name of Cam Jurgens, is the center right now, and he's very, very good.
Finally here, do you like MetLife's booth? Is this a place you like? Is this a place that you're going to like calling games? Or is this Where do you rank this in 32? Middle of the league, upper echelon, lower? Is this going to be a good experience for Merrill Reese going to MetLife?
Numero uno. Number one.
Wow, really?
Number one. My favorite booth in the National Football League. Not because of anything in terms of the charm. I mean, it's not Lambeau Field, but you know what? We're sitting there in the middle level with a large enough booth to feel comfortable. We're not sitting on each other's laps. We're on the 50-yard line, and they have something unique. They have the scoreboards on the field right behind the benches. So I don't have to go up there. Where's the scoreboard? What's the score? What's the down? My gaze at the huddle encompasses the down, the distance, the time, the yard line, the timeouts, everything I want to know. MetLife Stadium has the best, in my opinion, the number one broadcast booth in the entire NFL.
I want to sneak one last one on you. You think this is a Barkley game on Sunday? You think this is a Saquon Barkley game? Or do you think, again, that they're not going to try to make this game, because it doesn't come off that the Eagles try to make one game bigger or the other. But a game like this, especially if you're Barkley, going back to New York, and I know John Marr very well. I know the Marr family, obviously, from my time as a young guy in Robustelli. But I mean, you got to feel that he wants a little bit of retribution going back home. Don't you think?
Well, I'll tell you this. Aside from the game itself, the Saquon Barkley connection is the number one storyline of this game. But I stopped by to talk to him yesterday at his locker. He is such a down-to-earth, mature individual that he knows if he thinks about, I'm going to make them pay for letting me go, that's going to get in the way. He's going to go out there and play the best football he can possibly play and not get distracted by all of the stuff that we get distracted by. So does he want to run through them and take a ball 60 yards into the end zone? Absolutely he does. But he wants to do that every week. So, will it stir him a little bit? It would be unnatural to say that it wouldn't. But I just think he realizes the danger when you get too fired up, too on edge. If he plays his regular game, they'll win.
Absolutely. Merrill, thank you for all this time. I really appreciate it. Have a great call Sunday against the New York Giants. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks, Dan. Always fun being on with you.
You bet. The great Merrill Reese. We love having him on so much. He always finds time and carves time. Interesting to say that he said that the MetLife is the number one broadcast booth in the National Football League. And I'm assuming that's because he didn't mention, obviously, Lincoln Financial. Great stuff. I tell you what, I'm going to go Saints tonight over Denver. We'll redo the grades. We didn't get a chance to run through it. I so appreciate it. Xander, stay tuned for the show right now, right? Give me the name of the show here, man. I appreciate it. Sal Palantonio is going to be on. So you get an opportunity to listen to Sal talking some football here this week in pro football. Make sure you check it out right after us. Please hit the like button. Big Joe, Xander, we thank you. 2 to 6 tomorrow, and we'll see you on the flip side.